Coming to us from the US, we have Chris Jarvis, co-founder and Chief Strategy Officer of Realized Worth. Realized Worth is a global agency focused on the design and implementation of employee-led volunteering and giving programs. His work with companies around the world is helping to mobilize employees to make meaningful contributions in the communities where they live and work. In this session, Chris explores what compels us to give back and the benefits that come with volunteering and helping others. We'll be taking questions after Chris's session. So once again, please don't hesitate to pop your questions in the tab. You did a brilliant job with Matt's presentation earlier, so keep those questions coming. So Chris joins us live now. Welcome, Chris, all the way from the US.
Thank you. Good to be here. Hello,
it's lovely
everyone.
to have you.
Thank you.
Really looking forward to your talk. So without any further ado, I'm just going to hand the floor over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Gemma. Some of the phrases that we use for public presentations and whatnot, Gemma, are interesting now. Hand the floor over, because my floor is quite a ways away from your floor. So it's just sort of interesting. It's great to be here with everybody. Thank you for having me be a part of this very important conversation and presentation. I will be talking about why we volunteer. And before I begin, I should let everybody know that I have a condition known as Tourette syndrome, which is a neurological disorder. And it sometimes appears, sometimes doesn't. It can be vocal tics or motor tics or that kind of thing. I'm feeling pretty calm. Gemma's a very welcoming energy, and this has been a very well-planned, I've been taken care of right up to this moment. So I'm feeling pretty good about it, but a little stutter there. So I just wanted to make a note of that before I dive in, just in case I break off in a string of curse words, which is typically how most people understand Tourette's. That's not going to happen. I wouldn't worry about that. We're going to talk about a little bit of my work that I do in the day-to-day with companies, as Gemma set it up. And the work has to do with employee volunteering. So maybe a number of the people on the call today or on this part of this presentation have not really heard of employee volunteering, or when you hear the phrase, you think, okay, that makes sense. I understand what it is, but I don't know much about it. So I'm just going to explain a little bit about what employee volunteering is, and why companies are interested in doing it. And then we're going to get to the pivotal question, why do we help? And I'll explain why that is a pivotal question in just a moment. So why volunteer? Obviously, for companies looking like Medtronic to volunteer, and others, I'll give you some examples of the companies that we work with. There's an important role in society for the private sector to make contributions to work in partnerships with government agencies, with academic institutions, with other nonprofit organizations, to really strengthen the fabric of society as it's in all of our best interests. And companies have taken this on back in the day. The post office, the mail post here in the United States used to do volunteering early on when they would transport children across the United States in their mail bags. Believe it or not, actually happened. I'm sure they didn't carry them entirely in their mail bags, but that was the way to get kids from one coast to the other. But employee volunteering has been going on for quite a few years. But companies today are volunteering because there's been some good research over the past decade or so to demonstrate that there is a benefit to volunteering. And I won't go through all of these benefits. You'll see them on the slide there in front of you, but some of them have to do with employee morale, sentiment, the way we view our employer, a sense of purpose at work, more productivity, more discretionary effort. And so companies are looking not only to invest in their communities for the benefit of all of us, but also it's a way to strengthen a sense of team and a sense of productivity and a sense of direction at work. And so this has become an incredibly popular activity. In fact, if you look at the screen there in front of you, you can see that volunteering over and above the employee benefits or the benefits that might go to a company have to do with things like improved health, better recruitment, better retention, skill building. This is a short list. There's actually like 30 things on this list that companies are seeing in terms of a benefit to them as an organization and as to individuals as people get involved in the community. So we get to work. I'll give you a couple of examples. We do some work with eBay on their Global Give. Last year, they decided to, this is a program that we helped them design and develop. They gave away $1 million to strengthen small businesses in the community. And a key part of that was the voluntary effort of their employees, not only in identifying which organizations to give to, but then supporting them through the assets they had at the company. Another company that recently put out some press releases and information and that we have an opportunity to work with is Apple. And as you can see, they have been doing volunteering over the years. In 2013, we began working with them, and it's just exploded. It's an important part of their culture, which was a big culture shift under their new CEO. That's been a pleasure to see that happen in different parts of the world. And then finally, Medtronic. Obviously, we're thrilled to see Medtronic out leading. There's some materials that they have written up in the Stanford Social Innovation Review, and you can read more about the Medtronic Employee Volunteering Program. It's just an excellent staff, and it's a thrill to see that organization, that movement, the progress as well go forward. But as we're doing all of this, we try to take a scientific approach to volunteering. We want to move just beyond, well, this is nice to do, and it's probably important that we do, and it feels like the right thing to do, and move to something that's a bit more evidence-based. Because if it is so important, we want to make sure to strengthen it with good science, good research, and good data. And the way we begin our work is, as an organization, is we have to be able to answer the question, why do we help? What is it about helping other people around, whether we know them or not, strangers or not, that is so compelling to us as a species that we do it not just in the modern era, but throughout human history, all over the planet? Human beings find themselves helping other people. Often we know who we're helping, but more often than not, we don't. And when we think about employee volunteering, typically we're helping groups that we may have no real connection to, no familiarity with. And so as people think about, for example, our last speaker was phenomenal, energetic, a lot of amazing insights. But if you don't have Parkinson's and you don't have a family member who's dealing with Parkinson's, or in my case, Tourette's, most people don't know much about it and might see us as someone else who's other, let's just say, not quite like us, right? And so helping has been a compulsion throughout human history and it is a good way to kind of overcome the us and them. So I'm going to explain how this works a little bit. We'll go into the science, and then we'll wrap up in 10 minutes. We'll have some Q&A, and we'll see what kind of comes of this, okay? So turns out there are two primary drivers for why we help. The first one is a sort of a positive feeling, and the second one maybe is a bit negative. So again, last presenter was talking about the good feelings that come from doing good. And there's a physiological reason for that. It turns out that when the research has shown in multiple studies that when we help another person in a way where we can see their face, because of the way we've evolved or developed as a human species, a visual cue is really important, which is why this presentation is far more interesting if you can see me making expressions and waving my hands than just listening to a recording. No negative thoughts out towards all the podcasters out there. But it does help to see a human face when we're helping. We respond to that. The other piece is task significance. So if I understand why I'm doing this for you, those two things together go to create a reaction in my brain where my brain releases a set of endorphins, which make me feel amazing. They did a study, and this is in the notes. I'm sure we're happy to share this with anybody afterwards if they're interested. They did a study, and there's been a number of studies, as I've said, where they gave people an opportunity to give money, to help another person, to do some sort of what they call pro-social action. And they monitored the brain activity. And what they found, this is a short version of the story, what they found is that the brain releases a chemical concoction of endorphins that is almost indistinguishable from a runner's high or a yoga high or even sexual activity. And those three activities in the species have a strong reward system in our brain. Our brain has developed so that we reward endurance. You get that runner's high when you push through your barriers and you feel, people call it euphoric. Endorphins are actually naturally occurring morphine. And so when people say, I feel good with the runner's high or yoga's high, obviously sexual activity, that is the brain rewarding that activity because it is key to our survival as a species. And what they found is when they watch people help other people, and those two conditions were met, the endorphins that were released were almost indistinguishable, meaning that reward system in our brains is equal to these other activities that are survival activities. So the reward system seems to indicate that helping other people is key to our survival as a species. Okay, so that's the physiological, that's the upside. The downside, they call that the helper's high. That's what it's known as. The downside has to do with how we experience pain. So quickly, if I were to hurt my hand, like drive a needle through it or something like that, I would feel pain in my brain, not in one place, but throughout the brain, something known as the pain matrix. So my entire brain lights up. And I would know what, not to stop doing that, right? Turns out when you watch me put something like a needle or something through my hand, and this is actually a piece of research that's been done several times too, and it's we have these in the notes as well. There are mirror neurons in your brain that light up that make you feel pain too. And so if you've ever had a reaction where you see a terrible accident or somebody has a broken arm or just something, just where you can imagine what it feels like, that's your brain lighting up your own pain matrix, because those neurons can't tell the difference between experiencing pain and seeing pain in the other person. What does that drive us to do? Stop it, right? We want to stop the pain in the other person, or alternatively, we need to get away from it. We just can't look at it. So the two drivers, one has to do with how we experience pleasure. It's a reward system for helping another person. The other has to do with how we experience pain. So if we hurt ourselves or we see somebody else in pain, rather, we experience that pain at some level and want to intervene to help. So those two things together are the neurological, the neural basis for how we understand and experience the idea of helping. So it is a compulsion. It is a compulsion to us as human beings to help other people. It does feel good, or we're trying to stop somebody else's pain. And so this is the underpinning of why we help. And this is where we begin our work with companies. But there's something interesting with this, especially as we think about that item that we talked about at the beginning, which is how we experience the other. If this is a compulsion to help, if I want to step in, then why aren't we helping everybody with everything all of the time? Why are some people dealing with abject poverty? Why do we have a bias against people who don't look like us or talk like us? Well, it turns out that the desire to help another group because of the way we experience pain, this is the underpinnings of what we know as the concept of empathy. When I see somebody else in pain, I can imagine what it's like to feel their pain, and so I want to help. It really only works for your in-group, meaning that when I see somebody with whom I don't share a number of identifiable markers, such as a socioeconomic background, a health background, something like that, I'm less likely to help. If I don't share where we went to school together or the same language or the same skin tone, the more differences, the less likely I am to help. So on an evolutionary basis, you can see, I would risk life and limb to protect my little family from the dinosaur that came wandering through. I know there were no dinosaurs when human beings were on the planet, but we will put ourselves in harm's way to help our kids, our spouse, our friends, even our tribe. But if you go too far out, the empathy doesn't kick in. I don't feel the pain of the other if they're not like me enough. And if you went to school as a little kid, you probably experienced that. I know kids with Tourette's, they stand out, they're different, and they get made fun of, horrifically mocked by other children because they don't look good. Are those children bad? No. It's just how our brains have evolved. We see something not like us, and we think they are not us. And so we're not as likely to help because we help our in-groups and we tend to withdraw or pull back from our out-groups. And so when we do this work with companies, one of the things that we're trying to do is overcome this in-group, out-group bias. And there are implicit or unconscious biases. I'm sure a lot of us have heard about these towards people of a different socioeconomic order, people who are too far away, people who, again, skin tone. When you talk about it, it feels rather arbitrary, but human beings have evolved to really distinguish the us and them, the in and out. And employee volunteering of any kind is a great way, a great mechanism to take advantage of how our brains are wired to bring that out group in. And here's how it works. It's based on something known as neuroplasticity or neurogenesis. And what happens is when we are faced with a situation that does not fit our expectations, I'll give you a story of what I mean here in a second. We open ourselves up. There's a number of chemicals that are secreted in the brain that open the brain up to rewire itself. Neuroplasticity, you've heard this term, I'm sure already you'll hear it more because this is, of course, Medtronic. The neuroplasticity of our brain is rewiring, reshaping itself all the time. It's happening right now to one degree or another. It really gets triggered when you have a disorienting dilemma, when what you're seeing doesn't fit your expectations. So let me give you an example of this, and then we'll have our last slide, and we can wrap up with some questions that I'm sure you might have. When I bring people, one of the typical things that I do is I bring people to, say, a soup kitchen or a men's mission. And when we come in, we do a little brief and we talk about what we're going to do, how we're going to get it done, and then why it matters. The why it matters is really important because this is where I introduce the disorienting dilemma. For example, when we go to a men's mission, a soup kitchen, I'll say, I appreciate you being here today. It's phenomenal that you came. You all had other things to be doing, but you volunteered to be here today to help us serve this meal. So I just want to set expectations here. We are not going to solve hunger. We're not going to make a dent in nutrition today. This is one meal for 1 week. And you know what? They don't even need us to serve it. They have a way to line up, serve their own food. They don't need us. We are completely unnecessary today. That's not why we're here. We're here because these men are told all week long, get away from the front of my building. People cross the street to avoid them. They're seen with disdain. So for 3 hours on a Sunday afternoon, we are going to treat them like they're at the Ritz-Carlton. Right? We are going to give them exceptional treatment. We're going to smile. We're going to thank them for being here. We're going to thank them for letting us be with them. And we're going to treat them with the respect and dignity that we would hope somebody would treat us with if we were having a hard time. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, they have a gift for you. In this moment, you're going to see these men who have nothing to offer by society's standards. Maybe don't have a job, they're returning from prison, they're dealing with drug addiction, whatever it may be. They've got a lot of issues and they're just sort of written off by society. But as we volunteer with them, you're going to notice something. You're going to notice some commonalities where you grew up, people you knew, maybe that's happened to me, where you went to school, whatever it is. And you're going to remember something about your own life, that you are not the sum total. Your value is not based on what you wear, what you drive, or how much money you make, or the job title on your business card or your corner office. It's none of these things. Your value supersedes all those things, and so does theirs. And we share that humanity together. And our true value can be found in that and remembered in that. And so today, as we serve this meal, This is our invitation to remind them of their exceptional value and that we are thankful to be here. And they will remind us of the same thing, that we are not just the sum total how much we buy, sell, or make. And that's it. That's the disorienting dilemma. And from there we go in and we serve the meal, and we're up close and we see the face of the other person. We're serving the meal, and we understand the significance of the task is not to make a dent in nutrition or hunger. It is about our shared human experience. And in that, if we realize that, we can live out of our true value, which is why we named our company Realized Worth. Because when we go to these places and help, we see our true value, and over time we have an opportunity to live out of that value, and we can realize our true worth, not in any of these things that we're told are so important, and not in any of these things that we're told those men don't have, but something extraordinary and exceptional beyond any of that. And so we invite people, I'm not going to go through this slide, but we invite people to just think through, what does it mean to be here and be in this place, and how do we make this offering, this moment, transformative? Not just giving out food, but realizing our own humanity, the true value of this journey together, and entering into it. And this is how, going back to the beginning, how we can overcome the in-group, out-group bias that we all are hardwired with, slowly, incrementally over time. And I feel like this is an important aspect of what it means to even offer other people, if I have Parkinson's or if I have Tourette's, to offer people an opportunity to be close to me, work together, do some volunteering. It's a safe space. We're doing good, and just overcome little by little our bias against people who aren't like us. It's a phenomenal gift to humanity, and it has historically, through our history as a species, ensured that we can build civilizations and cooperate and overcome the fear and threat of the unknown. And volunteering is just a great avenue to realize some of these truths. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for being with me. This last slide here that you're looking at talks about the 3 changes that we hope to see. And with this, once I go through this, I'm going to open it up for questions. One is a psychological change. Good volunteering, transformative volunteering, invites me to see myself differently. Second is convictional change. Good volunteering allows me or invites me to rethink some of my beliefs, because they're not all right. Most of them, actually, based on cognitive science, are wrong or partially right. A convictional change. And then finally, a behavioral change, how I act in the world, how I see myself, what I believe to be true, and how I act in the world. These are the 3 big gifts of a transformative approach to volunteering. And this is what our work is about. Okay, with that, Gemma, I'm going to come back to you.
Chris, thank you. That was absolutely fascinating. It really, really was. And you took the kind of box that is volunteering and kind of blew the lid off of it. And there's so much more to it, isn't there?
Yeah.
And it's amazing to find that out. And I don't know if this is bad to say, really, but I think some people out there, when we sort of say, get involved, it'll make you feel better, it'll make you feel good, you kind of think you're just trying to get me to volunteer.
Yes.
You're just trying to find a way to get me involved.
Yeah.
But you've proved that there's science behind that.
Yeah.
And it's an absolutely reciprocal process. It helps everybody, and it's really fascinating. Without any further ado, I'm going to get straight to the questions.
Perfect.
So we have a question here. You said that people are less likely to help others who they don't share commonalities with. So what do you think about the fact that, we've now had a year living remotely? How do you think that could impact on people's willingness to feel connected and to volunteer?
It's an interesting question, because the premise is, now that we have not had the opportunity to interact, have we adjusted enough over a period of time so that we can maybe, or is there a new avenue to address the in and out that exists between us, because it makes everything level? And I have to say, there's hopefully somebody's going to do some good research around this, because I don't know the answer from an evidence-based way of thinking. But based on what we know to be true, or what research has demonstrated, it's that the Zoom or the video or the WebEx or whatever it is a great equalizer, because all of us are taking up the same amount of space, visual space. If you run a meeting right, you can make sure that everybody's included and you can participate. I think we can overcome some natural bias that we're unaware of in a real room, right? Where 3 people talk, they're mostly 50-year-old white guys, and they're people who have the highest, role in the company. That tends to be modified quite a bit. The downside is, though, Gemma, I can't see. Maybe you're tapping your fingers like, Chris, just answer the question. So I got 3 more. You have to move on. Normally, I could see
I'll
that.
do that.
Yeah. Let's get going. I can't see that now. So I can't actually see everything that you're saying to me. So I think there's an opportunity to equalize, but also the downside. But volunteering together online is a very cool way. If you do it in a transformative approach, it is a very cool way to overcome bias still.
Yes. And to talk about finding commonalities, Zoom and all those other platforms, it is helpful because you almost get a glimpse into people's humanity, when you get to see the room they're sitting in or a picture of their family behind them or the books they're reading, or it's a little cue to sort of, delve into other people's worlds, and take them out of the sort of clinical professional setting of an office. So for better or for worse, right? Like the pile of laundry behind you. Yeah, not good. True. Yeah, good point. Okay, next question. Yes. So what is your one piece of advice for getting people into volunteering? Because it might feel a little bit daunting for some people. Most people don't volunteer in a formal way. We all help other people. Everybody does. It's just a natural inclination. Every society all through time. But a formal idea of volunteering, like with a nonprofit for a period of time around a particular issue or project or community, that's not as well known. And only 1 out of 5 even Americans volunteer as adults on a regular basis. So the best way to get people involved is to have somebody who already volunteers and can talk about it with some sense of, I know what's going on, and believe me, you should try this out. That is the number one way that people get involved in volunteering. They're invited by a friend. And I go because, Gemma, you and I are friends, and you invited me, and I kind of, you asked me, so I have to. But I'm not going because maybe I know anything about homelessness, because I really don't have any, or even Parkinson's, because I may not know anything about that issue. So I'm going because of you. And that's the number one way to get people to volunteer. Okay, interesting. And everybody watching at home, I know that we can't see you, but I like to think that we are all friends here because we're part of this collective community that are taking our time to be here. So hopefully this conference can act as that friend saying, let's have a go and get involved in some volunteering. Another question. In the last year, what virtual volunteering opportunities have gotten you excited? So I'm an interesting person to ask that of, because we're collecting virtual volunteering opportunities from around the world. We found about 600 or 700 that are currently active and live. Online volunteering isn't as prolific as you might think it would be. It's becoming more prolific. The ones that I like are the ones that were designed from the beginning this way. So these are kind of odd, but you can do a project with the Hubble Space Telescope counting stars. Wow. So that's the other one is counting starlings. They're using people around the world to map real time where starlings are. That's kind of cool. Missing maps. There are people on the planet that are not showing up on anybody's maps, so they're not getting any assistance or support, and they're usually dealing with extreme poverty. So just using Google Maps and looking at, that's a road, that's a house, that's a car, just identifying, using human beings to identify that. Missing maps is a phenomenal example of something that people are trying that maybe they never even thought of before. That's fascinating. And final question, because I'm aware that the time is ticking. Is there a difference in skilled volunteering versus hands-on volunteering in terms of connecting to the experience or the positive benefits that the volunteer will receive? Yes, there is, but they can be compensated. Virtual volunteering, all of a sudden, I have no barriers, right? There's able-bodied, doesn't matter what your physical state is, where you are in the world. The only thing that could be a prohibitor is your understanding and access to technology. Okay. Real world, we have to overcome those. Especially for companies that have a remote workforce, that becomes more difficult. Virtual volunteering solves that problem. On the other hand, again, the physicality of being in proximity and being able to understand
everything that is being said and the unspoken words, real world volunteering, it's really hard to overcome that. But if you do the brief at the front end, like I talked about, here's what we're doing, here's how we're going to get it done, and here's why it matters, the disorienting dilemma. And then you do a little critical reflection at the back end. What did you experience? Was it what you expected? Just do those two things, either online or the real world. You can get similar results.
Very interesting. And actually, I want to reach out to everyone that's watching and just have a look at, because they did answer a poll question during your presentation, which was asking, do you volunteer? So it would be very interesting just to see, as it stands, whether we do have people that volunteer. So I'm just going to have a look. So we had 33 people vote. 79% of people said yes, they do volunteer, and 21% of people said no, they don't. It would be great to do this conference again and then see if that changes, after all that we've learned. But that's still an encouraging percentage, especially given the stat you said about, was it 1 in 5 Americans?
1 in 5. And so this community, we probably have a really select community that's listening or participating in this. And I do want, the one point I want to leave everybody with is my volunteering with Tourette's alongside people who don't have it is a phenomenal way to break down the us and them and give some insight. And so, because I've talked to people who've met other people with Tourette's later and have said, it just didn't feel, I knew what to do and what to expect. It felt easy to talk to this person, or it didn't weird me out. So there's this way of whatever we bring to the moment, if we have Parkinson's and we're volunteering alongside somebody who doesn't, it really helps inform the broader community, break down those barriers and unknowns, and create an in-group among all of us.
Yes, and that would just be amazing. Break down those barriers and spread the benefits. Chris, thank you so much. That was absolutely fascinating, as I said. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. So thank you very much, and hopefully you'll continue watching from where you are in the US. So thank you very much, Chris.
Thanks, Gemma.